All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10 o'clock Central Time. In the spirit of starting on time, I am Chris Miller. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Alibi Security. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning as we spend some time on video recorders and storage this morning. My cohort today is Patrick Liggett. He's one of our product managers. We actually reside in the same area at the HQ at Alibi Security. And we're super excited to be bringing you guys this educational session on some of the basics about recorders and storage. You know, as a security company that's been around for 30 plus years, you know, we've seen and done it all. And one of the things that we've really been trying to do as we bring you guys these educational sessions is try to be cognizant that you guys as dealer partners may have the need to train new techs. You may have new sales folks coming on board, and a good kind of 101 session is always appreciated, right? And because of our commitment to our dealer partners and the resources and people that we've put in place, we feel like we're uniquely qualified to help you guys understand some of those basics that go into really building solid, high-performing security solutions for your customers. So we are super excited to be spending time with Patrick today. He's one of the newer members of our product team, but he's got tons of experience in the industry. And we're just super excited to have him share with you some of these fundamentals on storage and recorders. And before we get into the session and I hand it over to Patrick, there's just some basic meeting, webinar, housekeeping logistics that we like to talk about. If you guys have questions during the session, use the Q&A functionality down at the bottom of your screen in Zoom to submit those questions. We're going to save all the questions to the end, because typically what we find, especially with the amount of information that we're going to be covering during the session, we'll typically hit a lot of the questions that you have throughout the session. But regardless, feel free to pop those into the Q&A, and we'll get to a Q&A session at the very end, you know, depending on how much time is allowed. And then if we don't get to all of your questions, just know that we will reach out to you guys directly and answer your questions through one of our dedicated account managers. And then, you know, one of the other things that we love to hear from you guys on as we hold these educational sessions are what other topics, what other subjects would you guys like to see us cover as part of these webinar sessions? You know, we want to make sure as a good video security solutions provider partner that we're hearing from you guys, and we're trying to cover some of the topics that you guys want covered that would be really beneficial to your organization. So you can use the chat feature for that. That way we'll kind of separate that out from the Q&A. If there are specific topics, pop those in the chat. Otherwise, any questions about recorders and storage along the way, just pop that in Q&A. I'll help moderate this session at the end with Patrick, and we'll get to as many questions as possible. So without further ado, I'd love to hand this over to Patrick. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, and then we'll dive directly into our recorder and storage session today.
Thank you, Chris. So my name is Patrick. I've been with Alibi Security roughly 5 years now. Started off in the trenches of tech support. A lot of that time, so I got my feet wet, helping you out, fixing your problems. Been on the product team roughly a year and a half going on, with my primary focus on recorders. So today's agenda, these are going to be some of the topics we're going to cover. The analog versus the IP, you know, which systems and hardware are required for that. Picking the right recorder, you know, channel count, resolution, storage considerations, bandwidth needs. We're going to cover all this, compression, and then adding those cameras to the recorder.
Yeah, and I think, as Patrick built this agenda, and he and I talked about this, whether you're in sales, whether you're quoting and bidding jobs, whether you're an installer, right? All these topics are really relevant to helping you understand how you build the ideal security solution for your customers. So there's a lot of meat here, and as a dumb marketing guy, I learned a lot as we were walking through and building this deck together. So I think this will be a great session for anybody in your organization that's involved in putting together systems.
Right. So the first is choosing the right system. What kind of needs do you have? Maybe, what's the infrastructure? What does that give you to work with, such as, cable requirements, maybe the cost of the job, and like I said, resolution. That's a big factor when determining the right system. Maybe you need analytics to help with the environment there and capturing the right recording that you need. So we'll discuss, the pros and cons of each. With an analog system, typically, it's lower cost. There's jobs out there, or, and projects that have been around, systems that have been installed for many years that, it's easy to upgrade with an analog system because the cabling's already run. Our systems are compatible with many types of cameras, such as TVI, AHD, CVI, and just your standard analog. So we are compatible with many technologies. And then, of course, your real-time transmission, due to where the process of the compression takes place. That video is sent straight from the camera, straight to the recorder. So it's real time. Some of the cons that you might come across, coax cable, typically it costs more than your Cat5 cable on the IP side. The video and the power also run on separate cable runs. Now we do offer Siamese cable that combine the two cables, but the two actual core of the cable is separate, and power does not run as far as video as well. And you're also limited on analytics on the HD analog side. On the IP side, we can handle higher resolutions and frame rates. So that's definitely a plus. Data and power run on that single Cat5 cable, which can be provided straight from the built-in switch on the recorder, on the NVR. It offers, the plug and play. You simply plug that Cat5 cable into the recorder and in the camera, and bingo, you have video. A lot more analytics built into the IP cameras. So all the processing is handling within the camera and not the recorder itself. So let's talk about the different, let's look at the cons first. Higher upfront cost with IP jobs. Cameras and recorders can run a little higher than your analog counterparts. You can run into issues with the network, such as firewalls, or some lag and latency issues. So sometimes you may have to get an IT admin involved to navigate those issues. And you're also limited on distance. 100 meters are roughly 328 feet, whereas coax cable can run a lot further. So what gives as I mentioned, the analog side, real-time transmission is the fact that it's that HD analog camera is recording that video and sending it to the recorder. Then the recorder is actually doing the compression. So, and it's converting it to a digital signal at that point, and then saving it to the hard drive. Whereas on the IP side, the IP camera is it's recording that digital signal already and compressing it, and then sending it over to the recorder to be stored on the hard drive. That it's inherent to the nature of the IP system, so you will have a slight slight latency or a little bit of lag due to that. But it's fairly close to real time. We're talking maybe, half a second to a second. But there's that difference though. So things to consider when installing, picking a hard drive, a recorder. Do they already have a system in place that maybe they just want to upgrade or swap out units? The analog side can be fairly easily done. Maybe they want to upgrade and add network cameras. How big is the job? How many cameras are you going to be putting on site? And what resolutions do you want to capture? And of course, with the big one a lot of people ask is how many days of recording will I get out of this? So we're going to look at hard drives considerations and choosing which units support larger hard drives. And with that, here's our lineup that we have, both on the analog side and IP side. You can see we have a value line that's starts on the ground floor that maybe it's a limited channel count, 16 at the most. Resolutions aren't as high as your performance and enterprise level. So thinking about what resolutions in storage considerations, we'll dive into which recorder maybe fits the right approach for you.
Yeah, I think whenever I look at this line card, Patrick, the thing that I think everybody needs to keep in mind is whether your customer wants or requires an HD and or IP system. We've got recorder solutions to cover the gamut of budget and channel count, right? We've got lower channel count, lower resolution options that'll be lower cost that fall on that value line. But for the more sophisticated, higher channel count HD jobs, we've got those more robust recorder solutions that kind of bump up against the enterprise level at the HD, and then on the IP side, really get into that true enterprise level by scaling up to 128 channels. So whatever your needs, we can find a recorder to fit that solution.
Right. So again, yeah, we'll start with our HD analog recorders down in our value line. Again, it's an affordable option. Again, lower channel counts. Maybe you don't need a high resolution camera. We have two hard drives. There are also our hybrid models here can support a limited number of IP cameras as well, and we'll get into that with these specs here. So again, with our 3X series, we have a 4, 8, and 16 channel models. The resolution again is typically around 2 megapixel. However, with these recorders, they self-adapt, and if you were to hook up a say 5 megapixel HD camera, as long as it's Alibi, it will auto downgrade to a 4 megapixel light resolution. And of course, you have IP cameras as well, up to 6 megapixel on the IP side, and you can see the channel counts there are of how many IP cameras you can add. So again, it offers a hybrid solution. Maybe if you wanted a higher megapixel IP camera and are okay with a lower resolution HD cameras, this is an affordable option for you.
Yeah. Hey, and Patrick, before you move on, one of the things that I've asked Patrick to do is, rather than going through all the specs again, all this information from a technical spec perspective can be found online on each of the product pages for each individual recorder. But what we decided to do is kind of highlight a few of the key features or functionality that each of the recorders offers, just so you guys can understand where these things are positioned against each other, right? This information helps you guys when you go onto sites and are looking at quoting or bidding a solution, to understand what series is going to be best suited for your customers. And It may be that they don't want a super high resolution, but they did want to add some IP cameras onto a HD solution that they already have in place. One of these, and they have an old recorder. These lower end or value oriented recorders would be great options for those types of folks. So the next few slides that we're going to go through just help you understand the series configuration that we offer, some of the key features and functionality. But as always, all of this information is available through our product slicks or through the product pages online for each individual recorder. We'll talk a little bit before you move on, because we've got these OneDrive, the Dropbox, and the Google Drive down on the bottom of this 3 series. Just talk a little bit about that, just so people have context for each of the recorders that those appear on.
Sure. On our HD recorders, there are cloud storage options where you can send video or even snapshots to either a OneDrive account, a Google Drive, or Dropbox. So that is another option. There are some setup involved, and of course our tech support can always help out with that. But that is an option with all of our HD recorders, is to send video, to the cloud.
That's cool. So there's some protocol built in that once you get it set up properly, it can kind of act as a cloud backup, right?
Correct. Yeah, it would basically be dual recording, recording to the local hard drive on the machine, as well as uploading to the cloud as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Moving on to our 4X series. So again, you're getting increased performance. You're still within the channel counts of the 4, 8, and 16, but now we can support the higher resolutions. Looking over here, we're up to 8 megapixel TVI now. On the 4 channel, you only get 1 channel on channel 1 for 8 megapixel, but the 8 and 16 channels do support 8 megapixel TVI cameras on all channels. Then of course we have up to 8 megapixel IP cameras as well. And again, same cloud storage options, increased audio inputs as well, for audio and connecting microphones, up to 4. So you do get that added performance out of this machine. And then moving on to our 5X series. This is for those jobs with higher channel counts now. We have a 16 and 32 channel options, and up to 4 hard drive bays as well. So again, 8 megapixel TVI on all channels, 16 IP cameras on both the 16 and 32 channel recorders. And this recorder also offers RAID option for storage. So if you need redundancy to help keep your data safe, this enterprise box can help you out with that. Then on our NVR side, we'll start again with the value series, our 3X series. Most affordable option on lower channel counts, a 4, 8, and 16 channel options as well. The recording eyepiece, like I said before, can do higher resolutions. So this one starts off with 8 megapixel. So you're getting that 4K resolution that everybody likes to see. Of course, I've added in some specs on the PoE budget for the built-in switch. Rarely run any issues with that. Incoming bandwidth, outgoing bandwidth, we'll get into more details down the road on those machines, but shouldn't run into any issues with this. Moving on to our 5X series. So we're increasing our channel count now, and you're getting even higher resolution up to 12 megapixel, and of course increased storage with our 4 hard drive bays in each of these units. Again, a 16 and 32 channel models with your 4K resolutions. So that'd be the next step up. Our 32 channel recorder here actually does have 24 built-in PoE ports versus 16. A lot of manufacturers out there only provide 16 plug-and-play ports. We actually offer up to 24. And then, of course, the remaining cameras of the 32 would be on the network. But that is an added benefit with our 32 channel NVR. Moving on to our more advanced 3X series. Up to 64 channel options, a 32 and a 64 channel. But these are strictly camera, no plug and play option on these recorders. All cameras will reside on the local network, or these models also have 2 LAN ports. So you can designate LAN 1 for your network that's on site. And then LAN 2, you can actually create for the cameras themselves. That way you're not bombarding the actual network on site with camera traffic. It can be completely separated. It'll alleviate any network issues that may arise. This is an added benefit with these 2 models. And of course, we also have RAID in the 7X series. So again, you're getting that redundancy. Our 32 channel NVR here has 8 hard drive bays, and our 64 has up to 16 hard drives. So added storage benefits. Of course, with your added channel counts, you're going to need that extra storage as well.
Hey, Patrick, does the 5 series NVR have RAID storage as well, or only on
No,
the
it does
7?
not.
Okay,
Only the 7X
starts at the 7 series. Okay, got it. Thanks.
And then the granddaddy of them all is our 128 channel. Up to 24 hard drive bays here, and up to 8 LAN ports. 4 of those LAN ports being your RJ45, typical LAN ports, and then we have 4 extra SFP fiber ports as well.
In this unit, this thing's a beast. I mean, this thing is just high performing, all the bells and whistles, touchscreen on the front. It just, the feedback we've gotten from our dealer partners who have ventured into the enterprise space and use this 128 channel NVR is that they love it. And we found a lot of traction with this unit, specifically with schools, large organizations that may have multiple buildings across a large campus. So if this is something that you're interested in, those larger jobs, and you've thought about this, it's a super unit for those larger jobs that you definitely want to consider. And you need to talk to your dedicated account manager about it.
Right. One of the key benefits, I should say, is it comes with a 6-port HDMI port video decoder card that allows for a video wall to be set up, which can be configured through our ACMS client software. But so if you like to display, a video wall setup, maybe in your lobby, for example, it has that feature as well. And it's only offered on this unit. So now we can look at the considerations, optimizing your recorder. We'll look at bandwidth and storage, and what roles they play with that. So here's a little diagram. Of course, cameras feeding into the recorder, those would be your incoming bandwidth, and then of course outgoing, to your computer or your smartphone when you're viewing. It's basically it's exactly how you would think it would be. And each recorder is limited on the amount of incoming and outgoing bandwidth. And what do I mean by bandwidth? Bandwidth is basically the bit rate set within the camera parameters. It all coincides with the resolution and frame rate and the video quality that is set within the camera, and the compression method that you're using. Typically, higher megapixel cameras require more bandwidth to function, and higher frame rates as well. Those settings can be tweaked and modified to accommodate any maybe downfalls of the location, but the cameras basically send all that incoming bandwidth to the recorder and then send it back out as you're viewing. So what kind of considerations do we need to look at?
Hey, Patrick, real quick. So what happens if you put too many high-res cameras on a recorder from an incoming bandwidth perspective?
Well, so we have seen that a lot. A lot of people like to, install a job or a project with, say, these new 4K 8-megapixel cameras. Now, with the added benefit of H.265 compression, that has helped and alleviate bandwidth, almost reducing it in half compared to H.264. You will get resource issues and bandwidth, incoming bandwidth errors on the recorder if you overload it. Most of our recorders, as time has evolved, the hardware has become better and better, more robust to handle these higher resolution cameras. It is possible though to
overload it.
Yeah. And you will get an error notification on the recorder telling you that you've done this. Like I said, most of the recorders have adapted to handle it quite well. You don't really run into issues until you get into larger channel counts and people that just want to put in purely, say, these 8-megapixel cameras. So it is something you need to consider, especially on the larger jobs.
Yeah, and the only reason I bring that up is, it's one thing to say, hey, look, there's incoming and outgoing bandwidth considerations, but the reality is, as I sit next to you guys, the entire product management team, that's one of the more common things I hear come up where you guys go, they can't do that, right? Where they overload the incoming bandwidth by having too many high-res cameras, high megapixel resolution cameras on a device that just wasn't built for that. So, being aware of the specs, the capabilities that recorder is designed to handle is really important. And to Patrick's point, the recorders have become smarter and smarter, and they have fundamentally been built to handle some of those issues by downsampling or down-resing cameras and stuff. But it can get to a point where you can put too much on a recorder, it just can't handle it, and you'll have errors on the system.
Right. And of course, like I said before, there are ways you can get in there and tweak the settings and modify those parameters. One common, workaround is lowering the frame rate. If you really want to have those 8-megapixel cameras, maybe just lower that frame rate down, maybe 10 frames per second. And that in turn will allow you to lower the bandwidth as well. Yep. It's all a balancing act when it comes to those camera parameters.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to describe it.
So with that, when thinking about bandwidth as well, you got your internet speeds. And most people think of internet when they talk about speeds is they think about download. Typically, when we run into issues, it's with the upload speeds at the site where the recorder is installed, because the recorder is sending that information out to the internet. So it's uploading it to the internet, and then you're downloading it from your smartphone or some other site, maybe a computer. So you need to be aware of the internet speeds, in particular the upload speeds at the site of the recorder. And it is possible maybe whatever service you have at that site isn't built to handle say X amount of cameras that you install there. And there are also there's two streams that our recorders and cameras send out. There's a mainstream and a substream, and the bandwidth is night and day between the two. And we'll get into that on the next slide. But and of course, the recorder can only handle so much, so many simultaneous connections at the same time as well. So let's talk about the mainstream and substream. Mainstream is it's your primary stream. It's your 8-megapixel, your 4K stream that you bought that camera for. It's recording that to the hard drive. That is not meant to be streaming. That's what the purpose of the substream is for, is a lower quality stream. You typically, it may be a CIF resolution. And of course, with that, equates to a lower bandwidth as well. So that is a purpose. Sometimes we'll see people, a lot of times maybe using our ACMS client software, they'll try to stream a lot of cameras at once, and they'll come to find out that they're all mainstream, and maybe their computer locks up or having trouble streaming that many high res, mainstream videos simultaneously. So that's the purpose of the substream. You want to utilize that substream it'll be a lower quality image, but you're sacrificing, that bandwidth to be able to view all those cameras simultaneously. That's the whole purpose of it. And then looking at storage, what do you need to consider when choosing the right size hard drive? One, the number of cameras you have recording to them, the resolution, frame rates, all that, the bit rates, all that play a role in how big the file size is when it's stored to the hard drive. Are you recording on continuous, or are you motion recording? How many days do you want to be able to view playback? A lot of places are required to have maybe 30 days of footage. So you need to consider, how much storage, and of course, the cameras and all that play a role in that. Then of course, some of our records, of course, have the RAID option as well. So that'll give you redundancy if that's a requirement. Looking at the modes that are on the recorder with the hard drive, by default, it's set to a partition mode. And that just means all the cameras record to that hard drive. Maybe if you have multiple hard drives, it'll record to that first hard drive, then move on to the second one, and then begin to overwrite once that hard drive is full. What we've seen in the larger recorders and larger projects, especially with higher resolution cameras, if we have continuous recording and it's recording to that hard drive, these Seagate Skyhawk drives support a continuous workload up to 64 cameras at 1080p. That's a spec we were given by them. Now, if you have all those recording at once, that can overwhelm the hard drive. The hard drive just can't perform. And this is at 1080p again. So again, if you have high resolution cameras, working some backwards math, that's at 4 megapixel resolution, that's 32 cameras, or even 8 megapixel, that's 16 cameras just continuously recording to a single drive. That's when we recommend the grouping mode. That allows you to group, a certain amount of cameras to be dedicated to a certain hard drive. So you can dedicate, this many cameras to this drive, this many cameras to that drive, and so forth in the grouping mode. It has helped alleviate, any performance issues that may arise. Then of course, the RAID, if you need that redundancy, RAID will allow you to combine multiple drives to act as one logical volume. And if a drive fails, you won't lose that data. You can just replace the drive and move on. And these are the different RAID options. RAID 0 and 1, really, that was the first generation when RAID was, invented. Typically doesn't apply to our scenarios. One, there's no redundancy in RAID 0. You're simply just doubling your hard drive space. Typically what we'll see is RAID 5 and 6 being used. That does require at least 3, and then RAID 6 requires 4 hard drives. So this will allow you, and I do have an example slide on the next, of minimum hard drives here, and what actual total capacity you'll have, and if a drive fails, or how many drives can fail. That first column, JBOD, that just stands for just a bunch of disks, so no RAID whatsoever. It's just, for example, you have 4 hard drives. Your total capacity here, with each of those being 8 terabytes, will give you a total of 32. There's no redundancy in that, so if one drive fails, you lose whatever data is on that drive. RAID 0, again, that's just combining 2 drives. into one, and so you're doubling your size. There's no redundancy whatsoever. So if you lose one drive, you lose all data. RAID 1, you can have up to one hard drive failure, and you can still keep your data, replace it, and it'll rebuild itself. And same, with RAID 5 and 6, you can have up to 2 hard drive failures. So those are the more common ones. And typically, I have seen also one issue that we run across is, say somebody has a 64-channel NVR, and they have 8 hard drives in there. They put them all in a single RAID volume. That's typically not a good practice. One, you're gonna have all your hard drives spinning at the same time, so you run into maybe some thermal, heat issues. And plus, the longer a hard drive is spinning and moving, its lifespan, becomes, less and less. So typically, you maybe separate those RAID volumes into 2. Maybe have 2 RAIDs. So maybe a group of 4 hard drives, 2 groups of 4 instead of one large volume of 8. So that's a good practice to keep up with. Codecs and compression. This is simply compressing the video. Typically, I like to think of it as a flip book. Remember making those back when you were younger? You draw pictures on different sheets of paper, and then you flip them together to make a video. Each one of those little images would be a single frame, and the cameras and recorders will compress that video into a smaller file size to help with storage. I put there on that chart, that kind of timeline, it represents a kind of the history of where codecs started from and evolved down the line. And just a good form of knowledge is that as they progressed, as you say, higher megapixel cameras have been released, new compression methods had to be be standardized to help compress that video. So again, like with today, H.265, it literally reduces the bandwidth and bit rates down to about half compared to H.264. So you're getting better, more storage with those higher megapixel cameras. So H.264, and that was kind of built, on the older MPEG-4 standard, and they just improved upon the efficiency of it and compression, and basically uses motion prediction to help predict the next frame in the video. I won't go into too big a detail on this, but it's basically, it just helps compress that video better than its earlier counterparts. Same with H.264 Plus. It was just an improvement upon the H.264. And again, with H.265, they even improved upon it even more. So it can predict that motion compensation, better as frames and video is being recorded, and reduces your storage size on the hard drive. There's a chart showing, it's hard to read, there's different resolutions, and that red bar represents H.264, while the blue one's H.265. You can see the amount of bandwidth required with that H.265 compared to 264. It's a lot less. And then again, with H.265 Plus, even more optimized and a better algorithm to reduce bandwidth. You can see the savings here on this chart from H.264 down to H.265, reducing it by half, and then again even more with H.265 Plus. I will say H.265 Plus, it does increase processing on the recorder, or with an IP camera. The IP camera is doing the compression, so it does increase processing. So there is a trade-off, but this is the payout that you get is a lot less storage on your hard drive.
So Patrick, if There are cameras and recorders that support H.265 plus, right? The highest level of compression out there.
Correct.
Would there be a time where you wouldn't use that? I mean, let's say you've got a customer and they're willing to just pay for a ton of storage space and they're not really concerned about live streaming or remote viewing. I mean, and they're okay with the expense of that added storage. Would you not use H.265? I'm just, I'm dumb marketing guy question here.
I can't find a scenario where maybe you wouldn't. Maybe not using the plus versus the not plus, but I would always use H.265 over H.264.
Right.
It's just a lower bandwidth and lower storage. So I don't know why you wouldn't use it. I can't think of a scenario where you wouldn't want to use it.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
And we have I'll show you, we have a calculator on our website that you can download. What I've shown here, our calculator will spit out a recommended bandwidth bit rate by what selections you choose. So you can start off with, H.265 as your compression. What kind of camera do you have? In this example, I chose a 4 megapixel camera, a frame rate of 30 frames per second with just a medium scene complexity. And it tells me, it recommends a bit rate of 4096. So that's 4 megs. And I chose in this, for the calculator part, I chose 8 cameras. And what we can do with this calculator, there's 2 ways of going about it. First, you can see how much space it'll actually take up. So that's in the space given. I chose a 10 terabyte hard drive with 24/7 recording. And with those 8 4 megapixel cameras at 30 frames per second, this will give me up to 27 days of recording. And you can do that an alternate way. You can actually choose, maybe you want to choose a time and see how much space you're going to require. So in that far right picture, I chose a 30-day period where I need video to be stored and recording 24/7. If I had those 8 4 megapixel cameras at 30 frames per second, I'm going to need 11 terabytes of storage. So one, does your recorder support that? If not, you may need to upgrade to a higher performing recorder. Or there are other hard drive sizes. Our max is 10 terabytes currently, but we are evolving as time goes. We get to 12, eventually 14, maybe 20 terabytes down the road. But,
and this tool is really important for multiple reasons. As Patrick has shown you guys and gals the 3 different screens here, making sure you're building a system that works optimally from a bandwidth perspective, vitally important, right? You don't want to overload the system, right? Making sure that when a customer says, I need 30 days of recording, and that you've built the system to accommodate that requirement, vitally important. And that dovetails into the storage piece, right? Making sure that when you say we're going to get 30 days, there's a hard drive capacity that meets that, right? That allows them, based on the resolution they're recording at, the frames per second, all those things, that the number of hours per day, that you've built in the proper amount of storage into that solution. So they're going to get what you promise that they're going to get.
Right. And with the storage, this also is a bandwidth tool as well. So I actually use this tool quite frequently. If I were to change that frame rate, maybe to 15 frames, you would see that recommended bit rate actually drop. So like I said before, it's kind of it's a balancing act. So that bit rate is all determined by your resolution, your frame rate, even your encoding. So if you were to change that to H.264 encoding, that bit rate would basically double to 8 meg. So it's a good tool to use, especially to reference bit rates. And then of course your storage for calculating that as well. And here's an example of some bit rates that I just calculated just to see a difference with your different cameras, resolutions. And this is just using a medium scene complexity or video quality. But you can see the bit rates basically half in the H.265 column compared to H.264 column with each of those resolutions that have been chosen. But you can use that tool that we just showed to do your calculations as well. You know, if you need a modified frame rate, for example, you can do that and it'll give you the recommended bit rates. So it's a very useful tool. And so with that, adding cameras or detecting cameras, of course, our HD analog recorders, you know, they use a BNC cable. You need to power the cameras, and as long as those cameras are, you know, TVI, AHD, even CVI, or even just your standard analog, our recorders are compatible with all those technologies, and just connect that camera up to the channel port, and you have video. Depending on, you know, what recorder you choose will dictate which resolutions are supported. And like I said before, with our 3X series QVRs, they will auto downgrade to a 4 megapixel light if you provide hook up a camera that is higher than the supported resolution. It'll auto downgrade it. Now, again, this must be an Alibi camera. It will not do this for other third-party cameras. And as well, the IP cameras as well. You can have IP cameras on your network. You'll just have to activate them. All of our IP cameras need to be activated with a password. And then, of course, you can assign an IP address to that camera based on whatever, you know, current network settings are there. And then you would just add that IP camera to the QVR. On the NVR side, there's a lot of different options here. Plug and play, of course. Just connect that Cat5 cable from the camera to a channel port, and it'll plug and play. There is a built-in network card on these recorders that will assign it an IP address. As you can see, that address there, it's 192.168.254.x. So it'll automatically be assigned an IP address. The NVR automatically activates the camera with the password that you've assigned to it. And it's just plug and play and go. Same as the QVR, you can have network cameras out on your LAN. Again, you'll have to activate them with a password and assign them an IP address, and then manually add those. These will have an address according to your network, so it will not be the same as that internal NIC address. So that's what I'm kind of calling out here. There's a difference. And then we have added the ability to daisy chain, connect a switch into one of our built-in plug and play ports. To do that, if you want to add cameras to it, there is a process. There's some steps that need to be taken. We have a PoE bonding setting that basically disables the plug and play feature. It does not disable PoE itself. It just disables the whole bonding process of plug and playing. So however many cameras you have on that switch, you'll need to disable that same amount of channels on the recorder. And they will be assigned that internal NIC address as well, as you can see by the IP address. And then you can just quickly add them to those channels that you disabled. And I have slides showing this. First, this shows what it would look like on the interface of our recorder. You see on D1 there, it has that blue status symbol. That is a camera that is plug and played to the recorder. You can see by the IP address, it has chosen that .254 address. And you can see at the bottom half of the screen, there is a camera out on the network that this NVR has discovered. And the QVRs will discover these as well. So you'll see there it's inactive. It's a camera that's out of the box defaulted. You'll need to activate that camera. There's an activate button there on the recorder that will automatically activate it. And of course you can edit that IP address to match a network address. And then you would manually add that one to one of the other channels on the top. And this slide shows our PoE bonding setting. I've disabled channels D1 and D2. I have in this example, I had a switch connected to channel port 1, and I have 2 cameras on that switch. So this is what it would look like you see it activated the cameras on the bottom. And then on top, you see there is no D1 and D2 because I disabled the PoE bonding. And what you would do is you would just simply add those cameras and they would fill the slots on channels 1 and 2. We've seen an increased amount of dealers do a job and install a switch this way. Maybe they have a wireless solution in place. So they would maybe connect a switch or even directly connect a wireless antenna into channel port, a designated channel port. You just need to disable that PoE bonding on that channel and corresponding channels of how many cameras you have. This is a typical topology that you'll see out there. You'll see for letter A there, it's probably most common. You have cameras connected to your NVR and the plug and play channels. You have a router connected to your LAN port. And maybe you have a switch or some other cameras out on your network. And those network cameras would be assigned that network address versus the plug and play address. And then B option shows a switch connected to a plug and play channel. Those cameras on that switch would also have an internal NIC address again. But just a typical diagram illustrating the difference between the two. A is far more common and more typical what you would see out there. But that wraps it up.
That's awesome, Patrick. Thanks for that. A lot of ground covered, folks. We do have a few specific questions. I'm going to kind of tackle the quicker ones first, and then I'll go into what I think is probably a more elaborate explanation. So one of the questions from Wilma was just about NVR firmware upgrades and whether our networked NVRs, whether they upgrade firmware automatically when that firmware is released. And I know that we were working on a version of firmware where cloud-enabled updating of firmware would be would be able to occur. You'd have to actually push a button on the NVR. Where are we with that?
Currently, so we are working on cloud updating, which would be reliant on enabling peer-to-peer, our platform access on the recorders. Currently, to this date, is not available. The NVRs would probably get rolled out with it sooner than the QVRs, but we are working on that. So currently, the method of upgrading will rely on downloading the firmware from our website and either upgrading through your web browser from a PC or copying that firmware on a USB flash drive and then inserting that flash drive to the recorder and doing it locally at the unit. But we are in the steps of getting that feature added for the future. Yep,
got it. And then another question about the cloud backup for OneDrive, Dropbox, or Google Drive. They were asking about the capability to store video or snapshots in those cloud platforms. Just talk a little bit more about how video can be pushed up to the cloud, whether it's in little snippets, or does it have to be full length recording?
Yeah, so there is some setup to enable to link say your Dropbox account to the recorder, and we have instructions for that, and so we can help you set that up. Other setup would be enabling dual recording on the recorder itself. That basically means the mainstream is recording to the local hard drive, and then the substream actually would record to the cloud or that that Dropbox account. So it's not going to be that full mainstream resolution. It is going to be the lower substream.
Like what you would view from your phone.
Correct.
Yep.
But that's the video that will be sent to say Dropbox or snapshots as well. You can enable snapshots to be uploaded as well.
Okay, so it does give you that capability. And then if you set up the cloud backup, right, you're pushing the substream up to the cloud, you obviously have to be really aware of overall outgoing bandwidth usage if you do have people remote streaming, because that's taking some of your bandwidth pushing up to the cloud, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, just adding another stream out there that's
Exactly.
constantly uploading. So
Yeah, it's
yes,
just
you'd
like
be
another user viewing that video from a phone or from a desktop, right?
right, right.
Yeah,
So yeah, you'd have
got
to
it.
look at maybe look at your upload speeds at the site, and of course the recorder itself, what it's capable of.
Okay, cool. Um, Another question was about elaborating on the function of the hot spare and which NVRs are compatible with that feature.
If it supports RAID, they will support that hot spare. So in the event a drive fails, that basically that hard drive is sitting and waiting for a drive to fail. Um, so once let's say a drive does fail, that hot spare will automatically take over in the RAID. So that gives you the option, it gives you the time to get on site, maybe get to that recorder and pull the bad hard drive and then replace it and then insert that. And at that point, that inserted, the replacement hard drive will become the hot spare. So it's just a hard drive waiting in the wings for a drive to fail. You don't have to enable this, but it is an option to enable. Obviously, it does require another hard drive to be kind of just be sitting there waiting and take up a hard drive bay. But that's its function really, is just to automatically, build itself into the RAID in the event of a failure.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, when we talk about our Alibi power tool set, somebody was also asking about assisting with IP cameras and manually assigning IP addresses. So is there any part of our Alibi power tool toolkit that helps with that?
Sure, we have an Alibi discovery tool. This tool will discover any Alibi products out on your network, the recorder, IP cameras. It'll show you the status of it, whether it's been activated or not. So it may show inactive or active. It'll show you the current IP address of that device. And you can modify and edit these parameters. So that tool is available. We also have a configuration tool. We're working on getting a new version of that out, actually.
Okay.
But it does the same function as well. So we do have a tool that will discover our Alibi devices out on your network and allow you to modify those parameters if needed.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's something we don't talk a lot about, is about Alibi power tools. And I guess a lot of times, sometimes we assume our dealer partners know all about it. So I think this is a good reiteration or reinforcement for us that we need to talk more about it, because they are great tools for our dealers to use when they're deploying solutions. So
Sure.
So we've got one last question here, and it's about what do you recommend for multi HDMI deployments? I'm not sure I know what that means.
Well, so a lot of our higher end NVRs do support 2 HDMI outputs. The QVRs, I believe our 5X series, I think a 32 channel may have two HDMI outs as well. You can try using a splitter, I suppose. If say you have a recorder that only has one HDMI and you want to split it. Now, what that does to the signal, that anytime you split a signal, it kind of degrades some. You may not be able to run the cable as far. We never really recommend running HDMI cable that far anyway. But if you have to split it, you can try to use a splitter. Now, of course, those images are going to mirror each other on both, monitors, whatever display you have going. But you could use a splitter, I suppose, if you only have one HDMI. But again, each time you split a signal, it degrades some.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, David, hopefully that answers your question there, buddy. If not, reach out to your dedicated account manager. We'll get you taken care of. Patrick, I appreciate the time and effort today to pull together the deck and cover this. Hopefully this was really educational for those folks that joined us today. One other thing I like to mention, because I am the marketing guy and I like to self promote, is, we've built a great YouTube channel, right? Well, Patrick's showing the dedicated account manager number. If you guys have any additional questions that we didn't cover, reach out to your dedicated account manager. If you just want to peruse the resources that we've made available, YouTube's a great place to go. We now have over 200 videos available there, and they cover a wide variety of topics. We are going to take this video, we're going to post this onto our YouTube channel either later on today or tomorrow. So this will also be available for you guys to review. Just spend some more time, especially on those spec sheets for the recorders. We know there's a lot of information on there. Don't forget about our website. Always a great tool, resources available there. We've got products that are downloadable, just a ton of resources. And then more importantly, since we talked a lot about it at the end, the Alibi Power Tools Toolkit is available for you guys as you guys are out there working on quoting, bidding solutions to make sure you get the customers exactly what you need. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your dedicated account manager with any questions as you guys are quoting and bidding jobs. We're here to help. We're here to support you guys. And we just want to make sure that you guys and gals are installing security solutions that perform, they're reliable, and they just exceed customer expectations. So we thank everybody for spending time with the Alibi Security team today, and we will see you on our next webinar, which I should mention is going to feature the Seagate team. So we're going to be talking more about storage, really in depth on storage. So if you have a lot of questions about the right types of drives, why we carry Seagate, what that means to you, because they offer some really cool AI features that are part of their hard drive set that allow you to save storage space, then join us next Tuesday for that session. You can register for that online at alibisecurity.com. Go down to the footer and click on continuing education, and you can find the spot to register there. So thanks, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you guys either next Tuesday on the Seagate session or in an upcoming webinar session right here live. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Patrick.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear a mask.